Welcome back to the Surfrider podcast, brought to you by the Surfrider Foundation. My name is David Scales. I'll be your host. Today we're going to get an update on the fallout from the Los Angeles fires and also survey 2 years of water quality data and the lessons learned from the Lahaina fires. Both fires created such an unprecedented level of devastation that there's really no quick fixes. There's no easy answers, especially now as people are looking to recover and rebuild. But it also presents a real learning opportunity for experts to prevent similar catastrophes in the future. But what is known and what should be considered is that aside from the ash and the airborne contaminants, everything that burned in the fires ran off with rainwater and seeped into the ocean. The lead in paint, electronics, entire vehicles with their untold hazardous materials, all of that ended up in our ecosystem. I live near Los Angeles and I've spent time at those beaches my entire life, so I really wanted to know where the water quality currently stands, what are the ongoing risks, and are there any preventative measures we might take to mitigate contamination during future fire events? I contacted 2 of Surfrider staff members to get these insights, the Los Angeles chapter manager and their Water Quality Initiative senior manager.
Yeah, Mara Diaz and I lead the Clean Water Initiative at Surfrider Foundation. So that's a national role, but I work very closely with chapters like the LA chapter all over the country, working on their water quality issues, running their water quality monitoring programs, and then implementing solutions for pollution like our Ocean Friendly Gardens program.
I'm Eugenia Emacora, Surfrider Los Angeles chapter manager. And I've been with the chapter since 2018. I started as a volunteer and then I was running one of our programs, which is the Ocean Friendly Restaurants program, then became a chair, and then the position of a chapter manager opened up, and I got this role about 2 years ago.
The Los Angeles fire started on January 7th, 2025, near Eugenia's home in Los Angeles, California. When the fires broke out, she was actually on an airplane returning from a trip abroad.
Well, it's kind of like a crazy story because so I was coming back from Argentina that night. The worst nights of the fires, I was actually flying back. I went home during our holiday break to spend time with my family. And on my flight, I took my flight in Buenos Aires and I had a layover in Lima, Peru. And when I landed in Lima, Peru, I literally have about 15 text messages from friends, girlfriends that I knew through Surfrider actually. And one of them was experiencing that her house, she has been evacuated and her house was burning. And her husband is a firefighter and he was off that day, but he had extra gear at his house and he was fighting the fires. So at the time that I got into the plane, I didn't know if my friends were safe or not. So I landed in LA the morning of January 8th. And that is when I found out that, yeah, Alec and Becky were safe, but they were evacuated and they lost their entire house. They live in Tahiti Terrace and the entire neighborhood burned down to the ground.
Surfrider has a general action plan for natural disasters, but the truth is, wildfires present unique challenges, and they're just so dynamic in the way that they shift and their evolving threats that they pose. So the events in both Maui and LA have served as learning opportunities and are helping craft how future response plans will take place.
When I talk about the fires and what happened, at the moment, our community and like our coasts were hurting. And we know the 4 stages of after a big disaster, which is mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. Surfrider focused more on the last 2, which is response and recovery. So on the first one, which is mitigation, we were just focusing on safety. That day that I arrived, I just make sure that all my volunteers and everybody that was involved were safe. And then our first response was to get information and share clear information with our members. So yeah, that was basically, we were trying to share clear science-based information on water quality, safety, and coordinating responsible programming when possible. But basically, what happened was that the beaches were closed by the health department, Los Angeles Health Department. Our main focus was water quality, and at the moment the beaches were closed, and we do enterococcus bacteria. Like Mara say, we have a lab and a program that we test the beach for fecal indicator bacteria. And at the moment we had to cancel all our programming in the coastlines just to keep our volunteers safe. So on the first stages, I went out with partners, with Heal the Bay, USC professors, and we were trying to align with SQUARP, Southern California Coastal Research Project, on who was doing testing of what, as we didn't have the testing of heavy metals at the time. And we went to test the water for enterococcus bacteria because we also wanted to learn those levels at that time. So the first time we were able to go safety and just staff myself at that moment was on February 10th.
Wow. So over a month later.
Yes.
Just to chime in, I think to start with, Surfrider is a network of people, of volunteers, right? So our first reaction is, or things we're worried about was like, for me, I live over in New York, right? Like, is Eugenia okay, right? Okay, Eugenia's okay. We heard from Eugenia, and she's doing the same with her volunteers. Are my volunteers okay? So, and there's actually a lot of Surfrider staff that live close to in and around LA. So, first you're just making sure everyone's okay. And then it's what's happening, right? Once you get past the point where the fires aren't burning anymore, right? Because then you're like, are the beaches open? Where are the beaches closed? Why are the beaches closed? Like, what are the things that are causing the beaches to be closed? Who's in charge? I mean, it's funny because when I look back at the experience that we had after the Lahaina fires, right, when there wasn't a lot happening after the fires burned to try to understand, is the water safe? Are the beaches safe? In LA, there was actually a lot of different, agencies and organizations that were contributing in one way or the other, but it was really hard to navigate to say, why did the Department of Health issue an advisory here and a closure here? Why is the water board doing this? Why is the county doing this? Why is the harbor district doing that? Like, there was a lot of EPA, and some of the recovery, clearing staging areas. There was a lot happening, and it was very confusing for both our members and the general public, beach-going public at large. So what Eugenia and I and a bunch of others really tried to do is figure out who's doing what and how are they making their decisions? Where is the information being posted? And what is the most critical for us to share with our members, as well as people who look to us as a source for beach information? Because even though responding to water quality threats after fires is not our core, wheelhouse, yet because it's beach, people are like, hey, Surfrider, hey, Surfrider, hey, Surfrider. And we're like, okay, hold on, let us look. So Eugenia and I and a few others really dove in and, got into these networks of, water bodies that or committees that were being pulled together from academia and research and health authorities to understand where is water testing happening, what is being monitored for, and again, what were we comparing pollution levels to decide this beach is now safe or this beach is still not safe? And it's a very complicated issue. And, agencies around the country are used to testing for fecal indicator bacteria. That tells you, is there sewage in this water or not? Is it going to make you sick? And there's like an exact level, right? If your enterococcus, concentrations are above 104, an advisory is issued. If it's below, they're not. That doesn't really exist, for the mass, wide suite of contaminants that can happen after fires. So, we're working with these other groups to try to figure out, how do we respond? How do we protect people starting to move back towards using our beaches safely? And that's been a long, complicated process. And unfortunately, it's been something that Surfrider and coastal communities are having to deal with more and more. We had Maui just a couple years ago, then we had LA. I was giving a presentation in Green Bay, Michigan, of all places, on our experience in Maui when there was, I think, a wildfire was here in Long Island 2 days earlier in the spring because it was some really dry weather and a really windy weather. And there was a fire down, I think, towards the Keys or something. And there was, so these wildfires are happening more and more often with climate change, extreme weather, droughts, extreme wind. And now, as a society, we're having to deal with them, and how do we protect people and protect our environment in the aftermath? So that's what we're really trying to dive into, because it was a lot of information and what's most relevant for people to know.
So it sounds like what you're saying happened during the Maui fires was you identified that there is a lack of interagency communication. Even if people were doing the testing, they weren't necessarily communicating with one another. And then there was no public, one space for the public to look to get that information.
I would say that was the situation in LA.
Okay.
Situation in Maui is there was no testing happening at the beach.
Okay.
So what Surfrider did was we rolled up our sleeves and we went out and we sampled for heavy metals, PAHs, which are sort of like derivative leftover compounds when fuels are burnt. So we did a couple rounds of testing ourselves, and that really motivated the health agencies and everything to go, okay, all right, we need to do something. California was different because there were so many different groups out there having a piece of testing for this, testing for that, and there wasn't one clearinghouse of information. So that was the difference. So in LA, we didn't go out and start testing for all these things. It was happening. What we tried to do was basically distill the information down and share it with people and explain what it meant to them.
Maybe it's different for Maui than LA, but where are the contaminants coming from? Are they airborne that are just landing in the water, or is it runoff related? And then what are the contaminants?
I would say yes to both of those.
Well,
Right?
in LA, it was a mix. And just to clarify, it's September and we're still trying to digest the information and trying to figure out what happened and how and where it got contaminated. We have two type of fires, one inland, one close to the coast, and there's still testing going on. We're actually trying to partner up with USC lab that they're going to start more testing on the soil. There is soil testing going on inland by the homes, and then also at Palisades. And what happened here, different than what happened in Lahaina, was that there was air pollution right after the fire, a lot of air pollution. But we got our first rain event on January 26 and then 27. Then we went out and tested the water. And then the second set of like rain, we got a late rain season actually in LA that was beneficial for all the air pollution that was happening. So after February 13, we have like a big rain event, and that helped with the air pollution, and that washed out a lot of the pollutants that were on the ground and in the air. There's several metals in the air and in the water and in the soil, and we can mention some of them, but like lead, because it comes from the painting of the house, and so many more. The list, it's very big actually, and there's still a lot of analysis going on what that means and where those contaminants have been and are.
Basically, when fires come, right, anything that is burnt is going to be going up into, it's going to be in the ash, right? So you're talking about a whole suite, like dozens of potentially different heavy metals that could be burnt that are, as lead, lead in paint is an obvious one, but it could be anything that's in a house, in a garage, in a business, in an automotive garage, like think about what's in your neighborhood, do people have pesticides in their garage, right? Those all get, up into there. And even just like burning trees and untreated wood will send a lot of nutrients, nitrogen and phosphorus, and into the water. And then also you have derivatives of fuel, right? Like PAHs is the abbreviation for those. Um, in Lahaina, we saw, because the fire was so quick and was so hot, those sort of like those get burnt and released out into the air. They don't end up in the water. To be honest, they didn't find much of those in LA either. I think because the health agencies were pretty proactive or conservative and like they closed the beaches and kept people out of the water, I don't think that was the pathway where people might have been affected from fire-related contaminants. I think it probably was more from the air, although, that's certainly not our area of expertise. The bigger issue, because, once these contaminants settle in the water, either from the air with ash or being washed down afterwards in rain and runoff into the ocean, it really does disperse pretty quickly. And there wasn't too many test results that showed immediate acute levels that would impact your
Okay.
health. Like if you go into the water and there's sewage in there, you can get sick pretty quickly because there are, pathogens that cause people to get sick. But after the fires, it's more of these like heavy metals and chemicals that really we don't have much of a tolerance for at all, but they're at such small levels, like parts per million, parts per billion, parts per trillion. So it's not like walking into the water and, coming out and, you have hepatitis or something, right? It's more like if you keep going into this water over and over and over and over and spending 4 hours a day for the next 25 years and being exposed to the tiniest level of chromium or copper or lead, what's the impact of that? The truth is, we don't know.
Yeah.
I think I think rather than humans and recreationists being the most exposed species here, it's the canary in the coal mine here is going to be all the small invertebrates that live in the water that couldn't like quick swim away when the water you know quality might not have been good. What are those animals that spend their entire life in the water and especially in a when they're young and forming and they don't have necessarily barriers between the water and their internal systems. And unfortunately, that's not something we're really going to be able to determine, in 8 months. That's something that all of these, folks that were out there testing to protect human health immediately after the fire, there's now more longer term studies that are developing where they're out there and really looking at what's the long term impact on whatever this fish population or this type of mussel or whatever species it is a researcher has to be looking at. So I think the data is going to be coming in over the next few decades, honestly, before we can
Right.
really look at what are the impacts of this fire in the marine ecosystem of the pollution.
What is the current standing of the water quality in LA?
As of right now, for recreation, the water it's okay. After the fires and the health department lifted all the advisories, we are still very careful and telling our volunteers and our members that on the burn zone areas, we do not know exactly what is underwater in terms of fire debris. There was, like I say, there was a lot of heavy rains after the fires that happened in the coast. A lot of buildings, a lot of houses, a lot of things were burned, and we cannot say that it's 100% safe to go in the water, especially for surfers. We don't know what the debris it's under. So we are very careful to tell all our volunteers and members on the fire affected zones. But that doesn't, we were what we analyze and what we've been looking into, it's like, are those fire debris affecting or leaking any contaminants? And until now, that was proof that it's not, that it's based on EPA standards, it's recreationally safe. But one of the great things that I want to mention that happened with this fire, it's that because the magnitude of the fires was something that LA hadn't experienced in the past. This created a big community mobilization, and there is a lot of people very concerned about what happened. And all these testings are happening for the first time. So after the fires of January 7, we will have a baseline on all these contaminants, whether it's arsenic, whether it's lead, whether it's like PFAS, and there is a lot more happening and a lot more studies like going on that never happened on other fires in the past. And we have very often fires, but this is the first one that activated all our communities to be very conscious of what's happening, where are the consequences after these fires for our health, for our children, for our families. And we're taking all that very serious and in consideration, and we keep like trying to understand more about it, because we know this is not the last episode, that this might happen again. So we want to be more informed to react in a different way. This event came so sudden and it spread so fast that we don't think the city or the agencies were prepared for the magnitude that this took. So that's why when we talk about what we did, for example, we were trying to keep our members safe, and we really focus on one of our programs that is called Ocean Friendly Gardens, that is focused on water runoff and resilience on our native plants and our environments, on how we can control and help the soil, right? So at first, for example, the first month we cancel and we put a pause on all like our coastal activities, but people were calling nonstop, volunteers, members were calling, how can we help? Other than us giving information from all those other agencies and groups, that they were really focused on the mitigation side that we are not experts on. So we spread all the information we had. We were trying to collaborate with other groups that started like helping hubs, whether in Venice, in Santa Monica. They were fantastic. They were very well organized, and we sent our volunteers towards them. But we also focus on trying to help people understand the recovery side of things, so they feel empowered after such a tragedy that we all live.
The EPA and Army Corps are responsible for this type of cleanup, but they're really just focused on debris cleanup. There's no efforts being made to purify nor detoxify the ocean waters. Once Surfrider gets involved, their team does use PPE during the cleanups, but they weren't authorized to enter the contamination zone until July 26th, a full 7 months after the start of the fires, just due to the very real health risks involved. So rather than sit idly by, Eugenia and her team shifted into a proactive, preventative focus.
So what we are focusing now, it's, for example, on the coast, we're prevention. We are pushing, for example, at the California Coastal Commission this week, a project that is like expanding the dune restoration nature-based solution on the Santa Monica coastlines. Like, we're advocating for that in the next few days.
Got it. Mara, can you speak more about preventative measures and or specifically the Ocean Friendly Gardens program? What is that? How do people participate?
Well, our Ocean Friendly Gardens program is our sustainable landscaping program that was originally developed as a solution, nature-based solution towards preventing and reducing stormwater runoff. Though the whole concept of it is using contouring and native plants to allow rain to soak into the ground where it can hydrate the watershed instead of, it being channeled out as runoff into the ocean. And along the way between your yard and the ocean, it picks up a ton of pollution, road dust, and anything, pet waste, anything that's applied to people's yards, fertilizers, that type of thing. And that sort of like toxic cocktail ends up in the ocean. So with Ocean Friendly Gardens, we offer, solutions that anybody can implement in their own yard to sort of slow down rain, treat it as a resource, hydrate your yard, hydrate your watershed, and stop contributing to stormwater runoff. But, as we become more exposed to climate change, we're realizing that Ocean Friendly Gardens, by using native plants and hydrating our watersheds, also offer nature-based solutions to climate change and make our neighborhoods and our yards more climate resilient as well. They really help provide benefits, not only preventatively before a fire, but also during and after. For instance, before, if you have a lot of Ocean Friendly Gardens in your neighborhood, your watershed, your ground, your landscape is more hydrated. So it's more resistant to fire, right? Than like dry, invasive species and grass. It also, your Ocean Friendly Gardens and green infrastructure provide sort of these cooling benefits in urban areas, right? If you've heard of like the urban island heat effect, Ocean Friendly Gardens do the opposite. So they really help hydrate, control invasives, your landscape. And then during the fires, sometimes the native plants can, even if they're well hydrated with deep roots, unlike, the turf that hardly has any roots at all, it can sort of be preventative and help prevent embers, because a lot of fires spread because these embers are shooting all over the place. And if those embers fall in an area that's hydrated, they're less likely to keep blowing and to burn. So there are some preventative benefits during the fire. And then afterwards, if you have, diverse native gardens, that provides habitat for displaced, animals or, insects, bugs after the fires. It also, that vegetation can help trap air pollution. Like, Eugenia has spoken a few times. The big immediate issue after the fires was, could people breathe the air? Could you have your windows open, right? So more vegetation and trees helps clean the air. And then even where there was areas with Ocean Friendly Gardens and those rain events happened, they helped intercept and like helped slow down and sink in, some of that rain and runoff before it, went downstream into the ocean. And when runoff goes into the ground, the roots and the soil beneath these Ocean Friendly Gardens help filter out pollution, and pollutants before it moves down. So we say our, Ocean Friendly Gardens started as a program to really reduce and deal with stormwater runoff, but we're now seeing that it also is a great solution to make our homes and our neighborhoods more climate resilient as well.
As the Water Quality Initiative Senior Manager, Mara has been instrumental in tracking water quality issues around Lahaina on Maui after the fires of August 2023. Through Maui's Surfrider chapter, they formed the Maui Post-Fires Coast Water Quality Monitor Program. I was curious about the current water quality and what they've learned from 2 years of sampling data.
what's happening now is there's some researchers at University of Hawaii that are continuing to do water quality monitoring, especially a little bit more offshore where the coral reefs are, because that's rather than a human health risk, closer to the beach where people are either swimming or surfing. We're not really seeing the impacts there, but we're more concerned about the very minor changes in water quality, whether it's through nutrients levels or maybe acidity levels, these heavy metals on coral reefs, right? Because coral reef ecosystems are very important out in Hawaii, and they don't have a lot of tolerance for change. And so 2 years out, that's what's being studied, I think, most closely. I think that's going to be something that's going to be underway for the next, few years, decades even, before we can really say, oh, the coral reef systems around Maui were resilient and weren't really affected, or yeah, we can definitely see a downward trend. We don't know that yet.
If you live in LA and you want to track the water quality, Eugenia and her LA chapter have made it easy to access in one location at la.surfrider.org. And I'd encourage anyone else who regularly experiences wildfires to consider checking that resource as a model to follow.
If you go to any of our blog posts, we share all the information of the LA Health Department, the county that has put together like a dashboard, and there you can find information about the ocean water quality, drinking water, the soil, the air. So there is a lot of groups that came together, and the county has done a really good job actually organizing this dashboard where everybody can go to one place and find all this information. And actually, thanks to Mara and to the team in Lahaina and Hawaii, that were super clear on how they communicated the information after the fires in Lahaina, we were able to connect with the LA County, and we are part of like some of these groups that organize and create these dashboards, and we were able to give them input on how to communicate this data clearly, because that's something that I kept getting information or like calls or people worry via messaging, whether it was emails, texts, saying like, hey, what's happening? We want to know more. And this is like a place where we were able to send people and be like, look, all the information is here. There is a hub, there is a dashboard. You can check what's the latest. So a lot of agencies and nonprofits have come together to give information to the county so they can share with all our community members.
As you know, Surfrider is comprised of local chapters, and those chapters are largely volunteers doing the work, in this case, collecting the water samples, etc. So whether becoming a member and contributing financially or just lending your time and effort, Surfrider cannot exist without you.
So in terms of water quality, we do ocean water testing bi-weekly on 11 sites. So whoever wants to get involved, like they can come and we do different trainings, and then we get them involved and teach them how we do the entire process, whether it's sample collection, processing of the samples at our lab, and reading of the results. And in terms of other programming, when volunteers come and members of the community are interested in learning more or something that we are not experts or we don't do, we do have like collaborations with other nonprofits that do the type of work that maybe we are not doing necessarily. But we try to, our programming, we have ocean friendly gardens, like Mara say, we have climate action, and we have the water testing. Then we do a lot of ocean friendly businesses and cleanups, and we try to help people understand what's happening and how to get them more informed and educated on all these issues. There is a lot of misinformation out there, and there is a lot of confusion after the fire. So we try to be the best allies on educating people on how everything works, especially after the fires. A lot of people have a lot of concerns on, can I get in the water? Can I surf here? Can I surf there? So We try to clearly communicate that, and we do that through newsletters, to blog posts, and every time we do an event in person, we talk to everybody.
Have you been back in the water since in LA?
I have. It took me a while. Actually, I had to take a break because I told Mara one time it's like my fins were drying, and I actually flew to Mexico because I was very scared of
Yeah.
getting water. I I was traveling south, I was traveling north, I was going to Santa Barbara to see friends or San Diego, and finally cut in the water in the South Bay after the fires a little bit. And yeah, I cut in the water in Santa Monica once I learned that it was like recreationally safe. Um, we also do another program during the summers, which is like One Watershed. It's a summer camp for inland kids. We partnered up with different nonprofit organizations, and we bring kids for a day of fun and joy at the beach. And we do this with AquaSurf. So we were very concerned about the water quality and the safety of our programming and the kids that they were coming. So we did our due diligence with Dylan, who runs AquaSurf, to make sure that the water was safe for us to bring kids into Santa Monica.
It's worth stating that water quality should always be a consideration, not only after a catastrophic event like a wildfire, and you'll be glad to know that Surfrider is monitoring water quality at hundreds of beaches around the country.
I guess the thing that I would leave you all with is, whether you live in a community that's been affected by a fire or not, water quality is a thing that can affect, an enjoyable day at the beach, surfing, swimming, whatever. So you should be aware that water quality and conditions, could affect your day at the beach. And you wouldn't want exposure to polluted water to cause you to be like sick later that night. So before you make your decisions on where to go to the beach, where to get into the water, check local water quality conditions. Surfrider is monitoring over 600 beaches across the country for harmful bacteria that could cause you to be sick, but also there are state and county health departments that are also monitoring beach water quality pretty much everywhere. So people have access to information. I think they just don't think to look for it. If you're going to go to the beach, you think about, is it going to rain today? Maybe you're looking at the tides, or how big the surf is. And just as important is, what are the water quality conditions? And is this a good place for me to bring my family in the water? So I'll leave you with that.
Monitoring what's happening as a result of the LA fires is an ongoing and priority campaign for Surfrider's Los Angeles chapter, with continued water testing, beach cleanups, all while they're also designing rebuilding plans that integrate nature-based solutions. Humanity's health is directly dependent on the ocean's health, and monitoring is only the first step to understanding how to help the ocean find optimal health. Eugenia is a great example of somebody who got involved as a volunteer and is now employed, working to ensure a healthier ocean for all of humanity. If you're inspired to get involved, whether physically or just through membership, you can do it at surfrider.org, because the ocean needs more friends, both for cleanup and prevention of future contamination. And the scope of work is really only limited by the number of people and resources involved. My name is David Scales for the Surfrider podcast, brought to you by the Surfrider Foundation. Until next time, learn more at surfrider.org.